My name's Ronald Seymore. I was in the Army on active duty and reserves, made it to the rank of E7, and then I also spent 5 years in the Air Force Reserves and was a Master Sergeant in the Air Force, same equivalent to E7 in the Air Force Reserves, and then I went back in the Army Reserves. Originally I was wanting to go in the Air Force, but the Air Force recruiting office was closed on that particular day, so I went around the corner and the first office that was open was the Army recruiter. And they told me that because of my vision, I'd never be able to serve in a combat unit, but they'd still take me. And the idea of never volunteering for anything, and then basic training, somebody came along and asked, anybody want to jump out of airplanes? And I raised my hand. And I ended up going to medic school for my AIT, and down there some guy in a little funny green hat came around and said, okay, I want to talk to all of you that are going to jump school about something else, and showed us a little movie about what I didn't know what it was, but ended up as Special Forces. I said, any of you be interested in that? And raised my hand again, and so I went to jump school and then went to Fort Bragg, went through Special Forces training, and then ended up in Special Forces. That was in '68. And everything back then was geared towards Vietnam. Psychologically, you were prepared that you were going to go to Vietnam and that was it. And I kept wanting to go to Vietnam, and I got to the point I couldn't get a roommate because every time I got a roommate, they would get orders for Vietnam, and I'd end up staying at Fort Bragg. And I ended up finally, my re-enlistment NCO caught me one day as I was coming away from an inspection to go stand guard duty again, which was one of our favorite things at Fort Bragg, and said, hey, I need a radio operator to go to Okinawa. And I said, no, I'm not interested. I'm going to get out. And then I went and put my weapon away and saw him again. I said, hey, Pappy, what do you need? How many years? Well, he said 3, 4, 6, however. When would I go? Oh, give you a 30-day leave and then you can go. Okay, let's do 4 years. And took a 30-day leave and went to a place called Okinawa. And everybody had told me, you go to Okinawa, you're definitely going to go to Vietnam, because they were sending teams over to Vietnam all the time. And lo and behold, I got over to Okinawa and got assigned to a team that ran a jump school they had there. So I didn't go to Vietnam then, got a lot of interesting training, went to Taiwan and went through a rough terrain jump school, and got to go to Korea and teach the Korean Special Forces to do rough terrain jumping, and had the experience of going through an exercise with them where they used the training we gave them and successfully made a rough terrain jump the first time, and it took us 6 times of going in the air trying to make a rough terrain jump, and we couldn't, and finally ended up infiltrating by train. I did end up going to, our team got selected to go to a place in Thailand to run a project with the CIA. And we were wondering what we were going to be doing, because suddenly we went through these Chinese, Thai, Lao, and Cambodian language classes, which was really interesting because the first thing they taught you in all those courses was, I am an American, and that was probably the most obvious thing that anybody knew. You didn't need to tell people you're American, but we all knew how to say it in 6 different languages. But went over there and ended up training indigenous people of different sorts for combat. And about the first time we finished the first training cycle, we told the agency that all we're doing is training these people to get killed. And the agency basically told us, well, you either work with our program the way it is, or we're going to see that you get sent back to the States and get demoted, and that'll be the end of your career. So needless to say, we ended up staying there for 6 months doing that training program. And then we had the privilege of all of this was unarmed advisors. One of us would get selected to go out periodically with one of the organizations that we had trained to observe what they were doing. And that was the closest I came to getting killed on several occasions by those folks turning their weapons on me, knowing that I was back there behind them watching them. And I don't, thinking back about it, I don't blame them because they knew exactly what they were in for. And, luckily we survived doing that. I came back, supposed to go to Korea at the end of that enlistment, but ended up going back to Fort Devens to the 10th Group and getting to spend some time in Europe doing that. Then when my active duty time ended, I was in Ohio. I went to Ohio and was in a Special Forces Reserve unit. And then after a couple of years, I got tired of jumping out of airplanes, and we had a C-123 unit there at the air base that we were using mainly for jumping from, and so they had openings for loadmasters, so I switched over to the Air Force Reserve and got trained as a loadmaster on the 123s, and stayed doing that until they decommissioned all of the 123s, and ended up going back to the Army Reserves because by that time I was in I decided to go through nursing school and was becoming an RN, and it was either I graduated at the same time that the wing got deactivated, and I could have gone and transitioned to 130s, but I also was looking at starting a nursing career. I had a job already, and I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and take my nursing job and go back in the Army, and did that. And then I had 18 and a half years in, and they had an opportunity where some of us I just had an associate's degree in nursing, could apply for commissioning as an Army nurse in the reserves. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. And they said, oh, and you need to take another physical because you need to re-enlist. And I took the physical, and they flunked me on my physical and said, oh, you've got knee pain, and so you're not eligible to re-enlist. And they said I couldn't get into the nursing commission because I didn't have EERs from a period 1967 to 1970, and I kept trying to tell them that, well, there's a good reason, because there weren't any such thing as EERs from 1967 to 1970, and got told, well, you're hiding something, so we don't want you. But I'm sure it's more a matter of, you've got 18 years in service, and we'll have to bring you in as a first lieutenant or a captain, and by the time you get done, you'll be a lieutenant colonel, and we don't want you to have that kind of retirement. So take your 18 and a half years and go. And so that's what I ended up doing. It was fun. I think the biggest carryover from that, though, was the fact that working basically with 12-man teams, and you became very good friends and very dependent on each other. But yet at the same time, you knew at any time one or more of your teammates might disappear. And that happened quite a number of times, and I still have that problem now where I cannot make good friends. I can't even tell you who my best friend is right now, because I've got this fear of them not being there tomorrow. And I know that's, my wife will tell you, that's the biggest problem that we've had, over 20 years of being together, is that it's very difficult for me to get really emotionally involved or socially involved even with anybody as a carryover from that. And I regret that. And then it's been finally, after 18, 20 years now, I finally got the VA to start considering some of the physical things that I've had wrong with me since my service time. And, back when I got out of the military, the reserves, it was 1988-89, I tried to utilize the VA's system, and it was such a frustrating system then that I just gave up on them. And I've had 3 knee surgeries, 4 back surgeries, and the VA has given me credit now for a disability regarding my knees, but they say that, oh, your back problems couldn't possibly be from your military service. It's normal aging. And, it's like, really? 300 jumps, carrying a rucksack normally, 110, 120 pounds, running 20 miles a day. But, after 18 years, well, yeah, maybe your knees are a problem because of your military service, but that's as far as they went. They stopped at my knees. I was a radio operator and also 5 years of flying on 123s, and those were the old reciprocating engines, and half the time we were flying with the doors off. And I was a loadmaster right there by the door, but they said, yeah, your time as a radio operator probably affected your hearing some, not enough to give you anything for it, and then even mention the time of flying as a loadmaster having any effect on my hearing. And it's like, okay, we got some things to talk about. Majority of what I did, we were training other people, and nothing's more fun than being in a grenade pit with somebody this high and giving him a grenade and say, throw it, and it goes straight up and comes straight down into the pit that you're in, and your job is to protect them and hopefully kick that grenade down the tube so that the concussion takes place down there rather than in the pit, But no, there was no physical problem as associated with that, Still to this day, I know all the commands to run a rifle range, And so, like I say, I truly do not feel that my military time was wasted time at all. I think everything that I did in the military has been valuable and, served a good purpose. But, there's just some things about it that, I still don't understand. And, like I say, I wouldn't trade the time, and I wouldn't trade the interaction with the people that I had, but, I feel like there's still something missing. My brother was a Marine, and I grew up in Newport News, Virginia, if you're familiar with that area. And I definitely did not want to go in the Navy. And I didn't want to go to Marines because my brother was already a Marine. So like I said, my choice initially was the Air Force. And had that Air Force recruiting office been open that day, that's probably where I would have went. But since they weren't open and the Army recruiting office was, it was one of those days that I'd been to a year of college because I got a $250 scholarship. And so everybody said, oh, you got to go to college, you got to go to college. And so I spent a year in college and thinking, why am I here? I have no idea what I'm going to do with a college education. And so I was working a construction job during the summer with every intention of going back to school in September. And then I think it was August, one day I got up and I said, I'm not going to work. I'm going downtown to the recruiting offices and see what I can find out. And like I said, here you are in the Army.